Hello class, it's Aaron again. Today I want to talk a little bit more about some of the problems that you'll be seeing in Module 2, and I wanted to go through a quick demonstration on using a spreadsheet again and looking in the textbook. So for this problem, we're going to be looking at a few typical values of farms. We've got gross revenue, depreciation, value of unpaid labor, etc. And we really want to use these values that we've gotten from previous chapters and use them to answer some just basic questions. And I want to show you how to do that in a spreadsheet and using the textbook. So first, let's talk about net farm income. That is just, if we look over at the spreadsheet, we could find the formula for net farm income from the table 6.2 in the book. And we just see that all it is income from operations minus interest expense. And if we've gained or lost on sales of capital assets, we'd include that too. But for right now, we're going to focus on this income minus interest expenses. So I can, again, if you don't know how to use spreadsheets very well, you can look at my quick tutorial video in the helpful hints part of the Start Here module, or you can just look up YouTube. So I'm going to hit equals, and I want income from operations minus interest expense. So I'm going to come up here and click that cell, income from operations, and minus, and interest expense. Notice how the cell references here are color-coded. So E6 is blue, E8 is red, and they're color-coded up here. This way, when we're calculating values in the spreadsheet, we don't lose any numbers due to rounding error. It's very helpful. And you can change how you want to see the numbers. I'll show you that in a second. Let's try operating profit margin ratio. So we look through our table, liquidity, solvency, profitability. Here we go, operating profit margin ratio. So from that, we can see that it's income from operations minus value of unpaid labor and management, all divided by gross revenue. So when we do that in here, what I'm going to do is first calculate the thing in the parentheses, the numerator, the top of the fraction. And let's say numerator. Numerator, and I'm going to say that equals income from operations minus the value of unpaid labor. Now, notice this says unpaid labor and management. All we have in this spreadsheet is the value of unpaid labor, so we can assume that management is either included in that or we don't have an estimate for unpaid management. So we have the numerator. We can also type in the denominator. Well, that's just gross revenue, right? So I can say equals and gross revenue. Now we can take the fraction, and that will just be the numerator divided by the denominator. And that gives us about 22.5%. Now notice, this is a ratio, so we're just going to leave it as a number between 0 or 1. But let's say that I want to round that. Now I can open up the Home tab. I can double click it and it'll stay open. And up here there are a few different tools that we can use. We can use these buttons to round it, left or right, add more decimals. But let's say we wanted to report it with just 2. This reports it with 2 decimals, 0.23, but it doesn't lose the accuracy. That 0.5, that little 5 on the end, is actually still in the cell even when we reduce the decimal points. But this just displays the rounded number, so that's nice to have. Let's take a look at the interest expense ratio. Let's go back over to our textbook and try to find the interest expense ratio. All right, I happen to know it's down here in the financial efficiency section. It is right here. So that's just interest expense divided by gross revenue. That's pretty easy. So equals the interest expense divided by the gross revenue. Great. I'm going to close that home tab. Okay. Now again, we can round that a little bit if we just want 2 decimal places. The depreciation expense ratio is also in that same section. Let's take a quick look at that. Just depreciation expense minus gross revenue. So equals, let's see, we've got depreciation on machinery and, divided by the gross revenue. All right, so we're moving along. Now, let's take a look at the average of beginning and ending total assets. This is an interesting one because we can just do a regular mathematical average, right? We have 2 things. We have the beginning and the ending total asset value. So we can just do the mathematical average, which is just 1 plus the second one divided by 2. Make sure we're adding those parentheses in there. And that gives us 1.7 million. Now, another feature of Excel or any spreadsheet program is that it has functions. So if you have a lot of things you want to average, you can hit equals and you can start typing average. And you notice that there's this little pop-up that shows you several different functions. Now you can scroll down through these with your arrows on your keyboard, and when you hit tab, it will automatically complete that for you. And if you click on it, it will give you a web version breakdown of what exactly it is. But let's go back here. We want to just list out the things that we want. So we can either click on it and separate them by commas, and that will give us the same value. Or if we go back in here, an easier way to do that is to select multiple cells by clicking and dragging. And that puts a colon between them. When we click that, it still gives us the same value, whether we type it in manually, the equation, or if we say average, and that's just a built-in function to Excel. Okay, so those are just some example problems from Chapter 6. I hope this was helpful. Spreadsheets are definitely great to use, and I highly suggest them. That's it for today. Have a great week. Ta-ta.